You spend months designing the perfect strategy, the systems, the charts, the vision board, and still watch it collapse in days. You pour your energy into building the perfect plan, every step mapped, every risk calculated, every goal defined. On paper, it's flawless. But reality isn't made of paper. Because while you were designing systems, culture was designing behavior. While you were drawing lines and timelines, culture was shaping habits and emotions. And when execution began, the silent force of how you actually think, feel, and act tore through the blueprint. That's the truth most people miss. You don't rise to the level of your strategy, you fall to the level of your culture. Because when these two titans clash, strategy and culture, my friends, will always eat strategy for breakfast. Before we begin, as usual, don't expect comfort. My job is not to make you comfortable, but to tell you the hard truth. This isn't about making you feel good. It's about waking you up to the reality that strategy means nothing without culture. That the environment you build will always overpower the plans you make. My ultimate goal is to bring out the best version of you, transform your mindset by challenging wrong illusions and perceptions, inspire positivity to the degree that you experience a mind shift, exponential growth, and you begin to live intentionally. So, before we dive deeper, please subscribe, not for comfort, not for entertainment, but for the truth. Because we don't avoid reality here. We confront it, one uncomfortable truth at a time. And if that scares you, it means you're exactly where you need to be. Consider the story of a company, let's call it PrimeView Tech. The CEO, a visionary, spent a year developing a groundbreaking strategy to pivot the company towards a new, disruptive technology. He hired consultants, ran endless meetings, and created an impressive 100-page document outlining every step. The logic was undeniable. The market opportunity was massive. Everyone agreed, on paper, it was the future. Yet, 6 months later, the project was struggling. Why? Because PrimeView Tech had a deeply ingrained culture of caution, a culture where mistakes were quietly frowned upon, where taking risks was seen as potentially career-limiting. Despite the new strategy demanding rapid experimentation and embracing failure as a learning tool, employees continued to operate within the old cultural norms. They double-checked everything, delayed decisions for fear of error, and subtly resisted anything that felt too new or risky. The strategy preached boldness, but the culture whispered, "Be safe." And the whispers were louder than the shouts. This isn't just about businesses. It's about your personal life too. How many times have you declared a new diet, a new exercise routine, a new commitment to learning a skill? The strategy is clear: eat less, move more, study daily. Yet, day after day, week after week, you find yourself slipping back into old patterns. The late-night snack, the skipped workout, the endless scrolling instead of reading. These aren't failures of strategy, they are the triumphs of culture. Culture is like the operating system of an organization, or even of an individual. Strategy is an application you're trying to run on that system. If the operating system isn't compatible, or if it actively resists the application will crash, no matter how brilliant it is. Let's delve deeper into what this culture truly is. It's not just about company values displayed on a wall. It's the jokes shared in the hallway, the unspoken rules about who gets to speak in meetings, the way decisions are really made versus how they are supposed to be made. It's the subtle signals that tell you, this is how we do things here. Imagine a village that has always relied on fishing for its livelihood. Generations have passed down the knowledge of the best fishing spots, the most effective nets, the sacred rituals before a journey out to sea. Now, a brilliant young leader proposes a new strategy: invest in advanced aquaculture, building fish farms on land. The logic is sound: more stable income, less risk from unpredictable weather, higher yields. The villagers intellectually understand the benefits. But what happens? The older fishermen silently resist. The young ones feel a pull towards the traditions. They talk about the spirit of the sea, the honor of the hunt. They might even subtly sabotage the new efforts, perhaps by not maintaining the new equipment as diligently or by spreading doubts. The culture of the sea, the identity tied to fishing, the rituals and stories. These are not easily replaced by a spreadsheet showing projected profits. The strategy dictates a change in action, but the culture demands a change in identity, and identity runs deeper than logic. This invisible nature of culture makes it incredibly difficult to change. You can't just declare a new culture like you can declare a new strategy. Culture is built brick by brick, habit by habit, over years and even generations. Culture is the invisible current that drags the perfect plan off course. You can design the most efficient plan in the world, but if the shared, unspoken norm is to avoid accountability, to play safe, or to resist change, your plan will drown before it ever sails. Strategy dictates a new direction, but culture is the overwhelming gravity pulling you back to familiar territory. Consider the meticulous, hour-by-hour schedule designed to launch a new product. It is a masterpiece of logistics. But the launch day fails because the team has a cultural habit of not speaking up when they see a problem, fearing they will be blamed for delays. The culture demands silence to maintain harmony, while the strategy demands aggressive, real-time communication. At the moment of crisis, the team defaults to the safer, culturally approved behavior, silence, and the perfect plan collapses, not because of a flaw in its design, but because the operating environment rejected its core assumptions about human behavior. The power is not in the plan that cannot fail, but in the culture that knows how to adapt. You must abandon the chase for perfection and accept that strategy is merely a hypothesis, a starting point. The true work lies in building a culture of adaptability, learning, and courageous honesty, where you are safe to question, fail, and course correct. Stop prioritizing the neatness of the blueprint over the messy reality of execution. Let's talk about the habit behind the policy. Every policy, every official rule, and every strategic guideline is a declaration of intent. It is clean, rational, and etched in stone. It tells how you should operate. But look closer. Every single written rule, from a corporate spending limit to your personal resolution to wake up early, is fighting a shadow war against an unwritten, invisible force. Habit. The policy is the formal contract signed in the daylight. The habit is the silent agreement made in the dark corners of your mind. And your habit always has an upper hand. Why does habit hold this higher ground? Because policies, like strategies, demand energy. They require conscious thought. To follow a new policy or strategy, you must stop, think, check the rulebook, and consciously override your default setting. Habit or culture, however, is your default setting. To adhere to a new strategy is to deliberately climb a steep hill. To surrender to an old habit is to simply let yourself fall downhill. The latter is the simpler. Human beings are fundamentally lazy, and unless the strategy is reinforced by a compelling, visceral, and consistent reward, the deep-seated comfort of the unwritten habit will win every single time. Let's talk about the shadow of ego in strategy. The belief that a perfect strategy can solve any problem is your ego's greatest illusion. Strategy is an intellectual playground, a place where the mind can feel supreme, crafting intricate systems of flawless logic. You mistake the complexity of your strategies for its power, believing that if you are smart enough, you can force reality to conform to your plans. This immediate, deep focus on cold intellect leads you to severely overestimate the strength of your ideas and fatally underestimate the force of the environment, the human, emotional, and social energy we call culture. The ego demands clean, quantifiable solutions, which is why it loves strategy. It seeks to prove its own competence by producing a beautiful, complicated plan. The strategist, fueled by this ego, will spend 90% of their time perfecting the what, and only 10% on the how of human change. They see people as predictable cogs meant to execute the grand vision, forgetting that every person carries years of ingrained habits, fears, and unspoken allegiances. The ego assumes the logic and intellect of the plan are contagious. The atmosphere proves that behavior and emotion are what truly spread. This failure to grasp the power of the atmosphere is fundamentally a failure of humility. The culture, or atmosphere, is the emotional weather in the room, the collective mood and shared history. The ego dismisses this soft stuff as irrelevant noise that a brilliant plan should simply bypass. It's like a brilliant engineer designing a perfect engine, but then ignoring the existence of air and gravity. The strategy might be scientifically sound, but if the atmosphere is poisoned by distrust, fear of failure, or chronic exhaustion, the rocket will never leave the pad. You cannot think your way out of a feeling. You must shift the environment that produces the feeling. The truly fatal error of the ego-driven strategist is the reaction when the plan inevitably fails. When the strategy crashes into the cultural wall, the ego refuses to admit it misjudged the atmosphere. Instead, it desperately blames execution. The team was incompetent, or the market didn't understand the brilliance. The ego will then double down on logic, creating an even more detailed, tighter, and more controlling strategy next time. This self-preserving pattern ensures repeated failure because the strategist is trapped in the cycle of overestimating their own intellect and systematically ignoring the human reality that dictates success. Let me ask you a question. Does your strategy make you feel smart, or does it make things actually work? Write this affirmation in the comment. I will take cognizance of the atmosphere before the ideas. If you want your strategy to work, you must starve your ego. Strategy must begin not with a brilliant idea, but with an honest, humble assessment of the atmosphere you are operating in. Ask, what are the people actually afraid of? What behaviors are truly rewarded? Your strategy must be designed to work within the human ecosystem, not against it. The courageous leader understands that the smartest plan is the one that respects the collective psychology. Stop trying to look smart with your strategy and start trying to be effective by honoring the true unwritten rules of the atmosphere. Let's talk about the unwritten rules. The code of conduct is the document you sign on your first day. It's clean, safe, and easily forgotten. But the real code of conduct, the one that actually governs behavior, decisions, and survival, is entirely unwritten. It's the silent contract signed not with a pen, but through shared experience. These are the unwritten rules, and they tell you what to do when no one is looking. They define what is truly safe, what is rewarded, and what will get you quietly excluded. The slogan on the wall says, "We value transparency." The unwritten rule whispers, "Never admit a mistake, or you'll be next." This is where culture reveals its true power, not in its aspirations, but in its dark, practical realities. These unwritten rules are forged in the fires of past actions. They are the ghost stories of the organization or the individual's past failures. For example, a company might have the written policy that says, "Bring forward bold ideas." But if, 5 years ago, a person who brought a bold idea was subtly marginalized when it failed, that history becomes an unwritten rule. Risk-taking is punished. The current employees didn't witness the event, but they feel the atmospheric pressure of caution. They absorb the culture of self-preservation. That single historical event now outweighs 1,000 optimistic memos, turning the official policy into a mere decoration. Violating the written code of conduct might get you a formal warning. Violating the unwritten code gets you something far worse: social exclusion. It's the cold shoulder, the omission from key conversations, the subtle judgment in a meeting. This social consequence is a primal human fear, far stronger than the fear of a spreadsheet error. This fear ensures conformity. You don't follow the unwritten rule because you read it. You follow it because you witnessed the quiet fate of the person who broke it. Culture enforces compliance through belonging, and belonging is non-negotiable for most people. Let me ask you another question. Are you conforming to your group's rules out of genuine agreement, or out of fear of social cost? Write this declaration in the comment. I prioritize truth over comfort. I accept the cost of standing apart. This is why slogans are noise. They are the marketing of strategy. Culture, on the other hand, is the map of the actual terrain. You can print 1,000,000 posters saying customer first, but if the unwritten rule, forged by leadership behavior, is to prioritize short-term profit over customer loyalty, every employee will follow the profit trail. The unwritten rule is not what leaders say they do, but what they are actually rewarded for, or what they actually do when under pressure. Culture is defined at the edges of crisis, not at the height of a celebration. If you seek genuine change, you must stop fighting the written policy and start dismantling the unwritten code. This requires courage. You must openly challenge the quiet assumptions and consistently model a new, visible behavior that violates the old, invisible habit. The only way to rewrite the unwritten rules is to create new, shared experiences where the wrong action, like admitting a mistake, is visibly rewarded, and the safe action, like staying silent, is gently but firmly rejected. You must show the group a new, safer path to survival. Strategy is meant to be a tool, a practical path from point A to point B. But when a culture actively resists genuine change, strategy morphs into something useless and often destructive. Theater. Strategy as theater is the elaborate, dramatic performance designed not to achieve a goal, but to satisfy the need to look organized, feel decisive, and appear busy. It is the ritual dance you perform for your investors, your boss, or your own self-deceiving ego. It is the ultimate form of strategic procrastination, where the act of planning replaces the courage to act. This theater demands a cast of actors. The leaders become the producers, commissioning massive reports and holding endless workshops. The employees become the supporting cast, nodding solemnly, taking pages of notes, and contributing jargon-filled suggestions. Everyone is performing the acceptable role of being strategic. Why? Because it is safer to fail spectacularly with a beautiful 100-page plan than it is to achieve modest success through messy, culturally disruptive action. The theater provides a comfortable excuse. We failed, but it wasn't the plan's fault. The execution was flawed. The performance protects the ego from facing the true, uncomfortable reality. The culture never wanted the strategy to succeed. The great cost of this strategic theater is the absolute waste of resources. Think about the thousands of hours poured into building Gantt charts, creating PowerPoints, and debating minute details that everyone implicitly knows will be ignored. These are hours dedicated to fiction. This energy is a tax levied by a fearful culture that cannot handle silence or ambiguity. The culture demands noise, and strategy as theater provides the loudest, most impressive noise possible. It keeps people busy arguing about the lines on the map instead of facing the difficult reality of the terrain right outside the window. Here's another question. Are you acting out a strategy or executing a change? Make this affirmation. I will expose the performance. I will pursue the difficult, quiet action. To defeat this theater called strategy, you must refuse the stage. You must recognize that the most effective strategy often looks boring. It involves halting the long meetings and reducing the complexity to its bare, actionable components. The true work of strategy lies in the unglamorous, consistent backstage effort of changing one small, daily habit at a time. Stop seeking the applause that comes from delivering a brilliant presentation. Start seeking the quiet, undeniable shift in behavior that happens when you reward truth over flattery and action over elegant words. The only way to stop performing strategy is to make it synonymous with the consistent, uncomfortable work of cultural reality. Strategy, when introduced through force, will always lose. Too many leaders, whether in business or in their own lives, mistake authority for alignment. You believe that because you have a position of power or a strong will, you can simply command a new strategy into existence. You push with budgets, deadlines, and pressure. But people and cultures do not fight for pressure, they fight against it. To make strategy win, you must stop enforcing your plan and start making the culture genuinely believe in your plan. Strategy must be woven into the fabric of shared meaning, not stapled onto it as an instruction manual. The difference lies in what people are willing to defend. No one is truly committed to a complex strategy document or a finely tuned spreadsheet. People fight for what feels true to their identity. Think of a soldier. They don't fight for the coordinates on a map. They fight for the flag, the shared values, the honor of the unit. The plan is the tool, but the meaning is the fuel. When a strategy feels like a foreign imposition, A brilliant idea created by outsiders, the culture sees it as an attack on their way of life and will silently, powerfully defend its turf. Building alignment then requires humility and translation. Instead of simply announcing the vision, the leader must listen and translate the strategy into the existing cultural language. You must show how this new path doesn't erase their history, but honors it by making it stronger. You have to ask, how does this strategy help us live out the values we already hold dear? This process turns the goal from something we must do for the boss into something we must do to be true to ourselves. Are you trying to impose a plan or integrate a belief? Write this declaration. I will seek shared meaning before I take action. I will translate my plans into my purpose. This intentional shift from authority to alignment changes the nature of commitment. When strategy relies on authority, you achieve fragile compliance. People follow the rule because they fear the penalty. This compliance requires constant policing and collapses the moment the pressure is released. When strategy achieves alignment, you gain resilient commitment. People follow the path because they believe it is the right thing to do. This commitment is self-governing and transforms the strategy from a brittle instruction set into an enduring cultural principle that the collective is willing to defend, making it truly unstoppable. This brings us to a crucial point. If culture always wins, are we doomed? Is strategy pointless? Absolutely not. The understanding that culture always wins isn't a declaration of defeat. It's a profound insight into how to truly achieve success. It means that strategy, to be effective, must either align with the existing culture or actively seek to transform it. But transforming culture is a marathon, not a sprint. It's not about grand pronouncements, but about consistent, small actions that slowly, incrementally, shift the underlying beliefs and behaviors. Let's go back to PrimeView Tech. Instead of just launching a new strategy, what if the CEO had first focused on cultivating a culture of calculated risk-taking? What if he celebrated small failures as learning opportunities, openly shared his own mistakes, and rewarded teams for trying new things, even if they didn't succeed immediately? What if he brought in new leaders who embodied this risk-taking spirit and empowered them to act as cultural change agents? This is where true leadership comes in. It's not just about crafting the brilliant plan. It's about understanding the human element, the psychological landscape, and the invisible forces that shape your actions. It's about recognizing that you can't simply impose a new way of being. You have to nurture it, cultivate it, and demonstrate it through your own consistent behavior. Think about a personal example. You want to save money, a clear financial strategy. But your personal culture might be one of instant gratification, where buying new things brings a temporary high. To make your saving strategy work, you can't just budget. You need to shift your cultural relationship with money, perhaps by finding joy in experiences over possessions, by celebrating small savings milestones, or by reframing delayed gratification as a greater future reward. You're not just changing a plan, you're changing your underlying values and habits. This battle between strategy and culture isn't a negative force, it's a profound teacher. It teaches you humility, the importance of understanding human psychology, and the power of consistent, authentic action. It tells you that true change, whether in a company, a community, or an individual, doesn't happen from the top down alone. It happens from the inside out, by addressing the very fabric of how you think, believe, and behave. So, the next time you find your carefully constructed strategy hitting an invisible wall, don't despair. Instead, look beyond the plan. Look at the culture. Look at the shared beliefs, the unspoken norms, the deeply ingrained habits. Ask yourself, is my strategy truly compatible with the existing culture? Or am I asking an old operating system to run a brand new demanding application? If you want your strategy to succeed, you must become a student of culture. Observe, listen, and understand the subtle currents that flow beneath the surface. And then, with patience and perseverance, begin the work of shaping that culture, brick by brick, habit by habit, story by story. Because only when strategy and culture are aligned, when they work in harmony, can true and lasting transformation occur. Thank you once again for joining me on this exploration. Please subscribe to join this continuous path of difficult but necessary deep introspection. Until next time, remember this: every grand strategy will crumble if the culture beneath it is weak. You don't change the world by rewriting plans. You change it by reshaping the atmosphere that gives those plans life.